am I?
How did you get here, miss? Who are you?
I have to. I need to go. Where am I?
You are in the supermarket. Oh, Lord. Miss, don't move. You don't look okay. You're covered in...
I'm fine. I need to go home, please.
You don't look fine. But if you don't want me to call the emergency services, I'll call you a cab. What is your name and address?
Elena?
As the janitor goes to call for a cab, Elena finds a jagged piece of paper in her pocket. It contains a warning she doesn't remember writing.
You did this for a reason. Don't trust anyone. They are after you.
I didn't see you for 3 days, Elena. I thought you have been traveling. And now you show up looking like a butcher's shop? What happened?
I have no recollection. I woke up in a supermarket and found myself soaked in blood by the janitor Tom there. Luckily, I'm not hurt. I remembered the home address.
And where is Julian?
Julian? I need Julian. But he's been dead for a year. A car accident. 12 months ago.
What are you talking about? You moved here 9 months ago with Julian. I saw you both together 3 days back here.
That's impossible. He died in Toronto. I moved here, Dawson City, to start fresh, because he was gone.
Elena, dear. You've been living here with your husband for the last 9 months. You even introduced him to me. I think I should call the police.
A knock at the door. Detective Elias and Officer Miller enter. They look sharp, professional, and weary.
Mrs. Gable, thank you for the call. Elena, we have a bit of a reality problem here.
I feel like I'm drifting between two parallel worlds. In one universe, Julian is gone dead. In the other, he's right here, living as if nothing ever happened.
Why didn't you want to call us, here or in the supermarket?
I wanted to, but this note, it warned me not to trust anyone. I was in a strange place with no memory of how I'd arrived. All I wanted was to get home as soon as possible. I don't know who to believe. I don't know if I should believe my own eyes or my neighbor's memories.
I will ask Officer Miller and a few other colleagues to go to the supermarket and check around. Do you want to add anything else here?
Yes, Detective. Peter is our neighbor, and he moved here 3 months back. He knows Julian, and he can confirm Julian lived here for last 9 months.
Mrs. Gable whispered into Elias's ear.
All hell broke loose when Peter, a new neighbor, moved into the flats 3 months ago. He developed a soft spot for the beautiful Elena and began flirting with her, creating constant friction and sparking frequent arguments between Elena and Julian.
Mrs. Gable herself moved to the area 6 months ago, following the death of her husband. She traveled across Canada to start over in these new residential flats in Dawson City. Elias crosses the hallway to another flat. Peter, a divorced writer with a smug look, clearly had soft corner for Elena.
Detective, I assume you're here about Elena and her husband?
You knew Julian?
Elena and Julian moved from Toronto to Dawson City 9 months ago. While her family and friends remained behind in the city, they settled into a new residential community where neighbors were only just beginning to trickle in. I heard them screaming at each other every other night. Frequent arguments. I used to make a few jokes, a bit of banter to cheer her up, but Julian didn't like it much.
Mrs. Gable says things got worse when you moved in 3 months ago.
I wasn't the source of the friction, Detective. Elena was distancing herself from him long before I arrived. She treated him like a complete stranger in her own home.
Elias records the statement with a heavy pinch of salt. In this new residential community, everyone is a stranger, and every memory feels like a rewrite of the truth. Elias gets a call from Officer Miller from supermarket.
The supermarket is locked tight. No bodies, no blood on the floor, no sign of a struggle. It's like nothing happened here.
Good work, Miller. I want you to grab a few more officers and sniffer dogs and comb the surrounding area. See if you can find anything that stands out. We haven't figured out whose blood is on Elena.
Detective Elias and Officer Miller have a massive task ahead of them. They need to identify Elena's real husband and figure out why she's lying. Is she lying now that he's disappeared? Or was the man she introduced to her neighbors 9 months ago a lie from the very beginning? The morning sun offers no warmth, only clarity. In a desolate, abandoned warehouse just blocks from the supermarket, the silence is broken by the baying of hounds. Rain drizzles over the rusted metal. Sniffer dogs are barking frantically near a heavy steel door.
Detective, over here! Behind the loading crate!
Detective Elias approaches. A body lies partially covered by a tarp.
Multiple gunshots, professional. But the weapon is gone. No shell casings, no fingerprints, just a man who shouldn't exist, lying in a place where no one should be.
Elena, Mrs. Gable, and Peter are summoned to the cold, sterile morgue. The 3 people look at one face. 3 people see a different truth.
I don't know him. There's a resemblance. A shadow of my Julian, but my husband died in a car wreck 12 months ago. This man is a stranger.
Elena, what are you saying? That's Julian. That's the man who moved into the flat 9 months ago. And you both lived together. We had so many dinners together at our flats.
Mrs. Gable is right, Detective. That's the man I argued with. That's the husband.
Regardless of his name, the science is settled. The blood found on Elena's cardigan is an identical match to the DNA of this body. She was there when the dead man bled out.
We're going to need someone to corroborate your story, Elena. Right now, it's 2 witnesses against your word alone.
I spoke to my mother, Sheila, earlier. She's on a flight from Toronto right now, and my brother Harry is traveling with her. They'll be able to confirm everything I've told you.
Detective Elias in a brightly lit office with Mr. Reed, a meticulous handwriting expert.
It's a match. Elias. The pressure on the pen. The slant of the T's. The note found in her pocket was written by Elena herself.
She warned herself not to trust anyone. But did she write it as a victim or as a killer trying to set a stage?
Oh, my poor girl. We told you those antidepressants were too strong.
Look, Detective, Elena hasn't been right since Julian died a year ago. She's been having psychotic episodes, hallucinating. She started calling this man, Leo, by her dead husband's name.
Leo, so this isn't Julian?
Absolutely not. Elena fell into a deep depression after Julian died in that car accident. Her mental health spiraled until she began having hallucinations. Leo looked so much like Julian that she started calling him by his name. We didn't object. We thought it was better for her if we didn't constantly correct her.
We thought he was helping her recover. We had no idea it would end in a warehouse.
Can you provide the name of the doctor who prescribed this medication to Elena?
Dr. Henderson was treating Elena's condition in Dawson City. He had been referred to her by Dr. Jones back in Toronto.
The body has a name now, Leo. But as Elias looks at the grieving family, he wonders, if everyone knew Elena was losing her mind, why did they leave her alone in a remote Dawson City with an imposter?
We've confirmed that Leo was not Julian, but the motive for his murder remains a mystery. Who was this man, and when exactly did he enter Elena's life? Did Elena kill him during a psychotic episode, only to have her mind wipe the memory clean?
Julian was a multimillionaire, and in my experience, where there's that kind of money, there are more criminal minds than we can imagine. To solve this mystery, we must dig into Elena's past in Toronto as deeply as her present here. A thorough background check on her friends and business associates is the only way we'll nab the killers.
Good thought, Miller. Who do we have?
Clara. She wasn't just a friend. She was Julian's equal, his business partner, the woman the world thought he should have married. Since Julian's death, she has walked away from the business entirely, leaving the ruins to Sarah and Marcus. Elena was never comfortable about her presence around Julian. Among Elena's business associates, Sarah and Marcus, the law firm couple. They were close friends of Julian, and they became friends of Elena after Julian and Elena's marriage. They are the family solicitors and managing Julian's multi-million-dollar trust since his death. Then there's Caleb, Elena's university sweetheart. He stayed close to her over the years, perhaps too close. He and his partner, Chloe, are in the exact same business Julian was in. It's a classic power struggle. Back in Toronto, the two couples moved in the same circles, sharing the same associations, and meeting just often enough to keep their rivalries simmering.
Officer Miller and Detective Elias realized the scale of the mountain they had to climb. They were looking at a year's worth of phone records, business agreements, and bank transactions. It was a massive undertaking, but for the first time, they finally had a clear direction for the investigation. Detective Elias meets with Dr. Henderson at his office, the man responsible for Elena's care and medication. His office is filled with medical journals and warm amber light, but the investigation quickly shifts from medicine to motives.
Elena's side effects, the hallucinations, the amnesia, they seem extreme for a standard antidepressant, Doctor?
I was surprised myself. But for her symptoms, there are no milder options. If she stops the medication, the damage could be irreversible. I had consulted her previous doctor in Toronto, Dr. Jones, and he had similar opinion.
Leo wasn't Elena's husband.
What? I'm reeling. It's a total shock. It changes everything I thought I knew about them.
Elias notices the way Henderson speaks of Elena, with a softness that borders on obsession. The doctor is clearly elated to know her husband is truly dead, confirming his own hidden feelings for her. Elias is inclined to believe Dr. Henderson. If the doctor truly had a soft spot for Elena, he wouldn't be overprescribing such heavy medication for her depression. It just doesn't add up. The precinct interrogation room. Old Tom, the helpful janitor from the supermarket, has been called to give a few explanations. While the world debated Elena's sanity, Officer Miller was following a trail of glitter. Tom wasn't just a good Samaritan. He was a thief.
We found the gold necklace and a diamond-encrusted bracelet at a pawn shop near the bus terminal, Tom. The owner saw blood on the jewelry. He contacted us. These belong to Elena. Did you kill Leo?
I didn't kill Leo. I have never seen him in my life. I didn't hurt her either. I just saw her dropped there, like a ghost in the aisles. She was out cold, and that jewelry was just sitting there. I thought nobody will remember the gold, whether she was alive or dead. I didn't want any attention from the police, so I took the gold and stayed quiet.
You're lucky she woke up. Tell me, why should we believe you didn't kill Leo?
I saw a man at the supermarket the day Elena was found. He looked incredibly suspicious. Not the kind of guy you'd want to run into. He was massive, just huge. I noticed him right after Elena left. But then he vanished. I didn't see him again.
Miller, get the forensic artist. We got some breakthrough. Is this the man you saw that night? Think carefully. Once you confirm this, there is no going back.
That's him. That's the shadow I saw. He had more gold than I could ever steal. A thick chain around his neck, and another one on his wrist that caught the light even in the dark.
Detective! This sketch looks exactly like the man who owns that abandoned warehouse, the same place we found Leo's body. He owns several local businesses and his reputation is anything but clean. I've dealt with him before. He has a history of aggressive run-ins with his staff. It's no coincidence the body turned up on his property.
Let's bring him in. You've got a distinct look, Victor. This sketch was drawn by a witness who saw a massive man at the supermarket the night Leo was killed. It's a dead ringer for you.
I've been big my whole life, Detective. Being large doesn't make me a killer.
We found a body in your abandoned warehouse on 4th Street. Leo. Someone went to a lot of trouble to hide him there. Why you're building, Victor?
That building has been a millstone around my neck for 2 years. I've been trying to sell it since 2024. It's empty, it's isolated, and unfortunately, it attracts the wrong crowd. You know my record. Every time there's been a break-in or a squatting issue, I'm the first one to call you guys. I've given you full access to those keys for months.
We also hear you've had some friction with your employees lately. Labor disputes, threats. Maybe Leo was one of those frictions.
I run 6 businesses in Dawson City. You don't get to my position without making a few people unhappy. But I don't settle HR disputes with a bone saw. Besides, I wasn't even in the city on the night in question.
And where were you?
The Grandview Hotel. I was at a charity gala until midnight, followed by a recorded board meeting that lasted until 2 a.m. There are 50 witnesses, 3 security cameras, and a signed set of minutes to prove it.
Check the footage. If he's telling the truth, we're back to square one.
I'm not your man, Detective. But if someone used my warehouse to dump a body, they either knew I wouldn't be there, or they wanted you to find me first.
Detective Elias and his team began a deep dive into the finances of Elena's inner circle. They combed through records for her friends and family, looking for any sign of a motive. He calls Sarah about the trust.
Hello, Sarah. This is Detective Elias from the Dawson City Police Department. I'm calling regarding the trust established by Julian and Elena. My understanding is that your firm has been managing those assets since Julian's passing.
Mother Sheila and Brother Harry are both listed as beneficiaries of Julian and Elena's trust. If we liquidate the trust, they will be getting a sizable chunk of the assets along with the others.
Anything else you would like to divulge about the trust?
I'm not sure if Elena mentioned this, but her brother Harry is underwater. A failed business venture left him buried in debt. He approached her, begging for a massive loan to clear his name. Elena actually reached out to Marcus and me to see if the trust could cover it. Leo wasn't happy about the situation. I suspect there was a major disagreement brewing between him and Harry. Honestly, Leo should have stayed out of it. He shouldn't have stuck his nose where it didn't belong.
A failed venture in the past, Harry. Large debts that aren't going away, and collectors who don't take no for an answer. You're a beneficiary of Elena's trust. With Leo out of the way and Elena in a psych ward, those millions would finally be within your reach.
You think I'd kill for a line of credit? I'm in debt, detective. Deep, ugly debt, but that doesn't make me a criminal.
People have killed for a lot less than what's in Julian's estate.
I've watched my sister break apart for a year. I've watched her talk to ghosts. I would never commit a crime that puts Elena in trouble, and I certainly wouldn't kill that man for her money.
You didn't like Leo.
Leo? I ignored Leah. Why would I bother with a man who had no say in the trust? He was a puppet. He didn't decide where the wealth went. The solicitors and the trust documents did.
Harry comes clean, his desperation replaced by a raw, protective anger. He admits to the greed, admits to the debt, but he stands firm on one truth. He is a failure, not a murderer. The break in the case comes from the national database. The body in the warehouse isn't a husband, and he isn't just a Leo.
He's an imposter, detective, a career criminal wanted for forgery, scams, and honey traps.
So, Leo wasn't just living a lie, he was a professional at it. We need a deep dive into his phone records and every address he maintained under the radar.
The detective and Officer Miller reveal the criminal past of Leo. Elena's eyes are darting, her hands trembling. She is still the primary suspect in this murder. But as the questions rain down, she retreats into the only fortress she has left, her own confusion.
Everything is a blur. My head is split in two.
We were hoping that your condition has improved and your memory is back. You have to give us a timeline. Did you meet Leo here in Dawson City, or did you meet him in Toronto?
I can't tell you what's real. 1 minute I am in Toronto, and Julian is calling me from the office. He's alive. I can hear his voice. And then, the universe shifts. I'm in this village. Julian is a year on the ground, and a stranger is wearing his face in my kitchen. I'm trying to gain my memories back, but they're fighting me.
Elias watches her with a practiced eye. He feels for her, the trauma, the fractured memories. But his gut tells a different story. There's a hollow ring to her words. Elena isn't just a victim of her own mind. She's a woman keeping a secret. Every secret has a paper trail. While searching through Dr. Henderson Clinic's visitor logs, Officer Miller found a name that shouldn't have been there. Not once, but several times, 7-8 months back. The ghost had a doctor, and that doctor was the same man treating Elena.
When I last met you, Doctor, you never mentioned this. Leo visited this office more than a few times since Elena moved here. You failed to disclose he was your patient, too. Care to explain why?
Leo was never truly my patient. He booked several consultations claiming he suffered from a mental illness, but my assessments always showed he was perfectly healthy, although he was a bit paranoid, unstable, and restless. Despite that, he wouldn't stop pestering me for high-dosage prescriptions. Eventually, I'd had enough and gave him a stern warning to stay away. I had no idea he was a career fraudster.
You have a soft spot for Elena, don't you? Last time, when I revealed Leo was not her husband and that her real husband died a year ago, you didn't look shocked. You looked relieved. Like you were happy Leo is gone now.
That is an outrageous accusation. Of course, I was relieved for Elena when the truth came out. I never liked Leo. If you want my honest opinion, they never looked like a married couple to begin with. There was always something wrong between them.
Henderson's defense is as polished as his office, but the tension in the room remains. He admits to the patient-doctor connection, but denies the crime. Officer Miller was following a lead that went back years. The National Crime Database didn't just give them a name. It gave them a history, an address in a quiet Vancouver suburb.
I've got it. Leo's real life isn't here. It's back in the city. I'm heading to Vancouver to speak Leo's mother, Christine, there.
A modest, slightly dated living room in Vancouver. The house smelled of stale tea and old memories. Lace doilies sit on the arms of floral chairs. An elderly woman, Leo's mother, Christine, sits opposite Miller. She didn't look like the mother of a master manipulator. She looked like a woman who had spent a lifetime making excuses for a son who never quite went straight.
I'm truly sorry to be the one to bring you this news, ma'am. Leo was living with a woman named Elena at the time of his death in a remote town, Dawson City. We are currently treating this as a homicide investigation, and we've uncovered several leads. As his mother, we're hoping you can help us fill in the blanks regarding his past.
My Leo, he always had a way with people, especially beautiful women with heavy purses. I remember the name Elena. He met her in Toronto about a year back.
What do you mean? Are you sure?
Oh, yes. It was more than a year ago in Toronto. Leo came home talking about her Elena. He said they were friends. He was quite taken with her. Leo used to brag about their relationship. Said he was the only one who really understood her, even with her rich husband and her big house. They were close.
Miller sat in silence as the weight of the revelation settled. Elena hadn't just met an imposter. She had brought a ghost into her home that she had known for years. The friendship began while her husband was alive, turning her story of a chance encounter into something much more calculated. The walls were finally closing in. Detective Elias didn't need a ghost to solve this case. He needed the truth behind the affair. The neighbors had seen the fights, and Leo's mother had confirmed the timeline. Elena wasn't just a victim. She was a woman with a secret that started long before the car accident.
You didn't meet Leo after Julian died, Elena. You met him in Toronto. You were seeing him while your husband was still alive. Peter and Mrs. Gable heard the arguments. Did Leo become too much for you to handle? Did you kill him to bury the evidence of your affair?
I was drowning, Elias. Julian and Clara, they were a team. They traveled together. They spoke a language of power I couldn't touch. Clara was beautiful, clever, and everything I wasn't. I was alone in that big house for weeks at a time.
So you found Leo.
I met him in a bar in Toronto. He listened. For a moment, I didn't feel like the fragile wife. I admit it, I cheated, but it wasn't a grand romance. I stopped seeing him after a couple of meetings. I tried to fix my marriage.
She reveals that it was only after Julian's death that Leo reappeared, using his uncanny resemblance and her drug-induced haze to slip back into her life.
Then why call him Julian? Why live the lie for 9 months?
The medicine, the pills Dr. Henderson gave me, they blurred the edges of the world. Leo looked so much like him, and my mind wanted Julian back so badly that I let myself believe the lie. The medication was also sealing my memories as well, but occasionally the mist would clear. When I clawed my way back to the real world, I could sense something was not right.
You grew suspicious.
Yes, he was forceful, desperate, like a man running out of time. He was obsessed with the trust Julian and I had built, constantly digging for the exact numbers. When my brother Harry reached out for help, Leo was furious. He tried to control my every decision. He was getting restless, his greed making him bolder and more intrusive by the day. He even reached out to Sarah and Marcus.
And the note?
I remember now. I wrote it. He wanted us to travel to the countryside. The note was to remind myself that if I woke up and he was gone, or if I had to run, that it wasn't a hallucination. It was a choice. I was fighting back.
The revelation changes everything. Elena wasn't just a bystander in her own life. She was a woman playing a dangerous game of cat and mouse with a professional scammer. The final piece of the puzzle isn't found in a laboratory, but in a grainy frame of surveillance footage. The portrait drawn from the janitor's memory finds a name: Tony Lip, a career criminal, a fixer, and a man who specializes in making problems disappear.
Send out an APB to all stations. If you spot this man, move in and make the arrest immediately. Approach with extreme caution. Suspect is likely armed and dangerous. Miller, I want you and a task force on his digital footprint. Scour his phone records and bank statements. There has to be a link between him, Elena, and the rest of these suspects.
Officer Miller, Detective Elias, and the team began tearing through Tony Lip's digital life. Amidst the chaos of bank statements and burner logs, one Toronto number kept appearing over and over again. It was the direct line to Sarah and Marcus's law firm. The suspect wasn't just a stranger. He was in constant contact with the people managing Julian's estate. Detective followed the trail of Julian's trust and the bank transactions. Sarah and Marcus have been bleeding it dry since the car accident, covering the holes with forged signatures.
The game is over. It's time to arrest Sarah and Marcus. We have the phone logs and the financial trail, more than enough to implicate them both. Bring them into the precinct. You're smart, Sarah. Marcus. But you aren't nearly as smart as you think you are. Let's look at the breadcrumbs you left behind. Exhibit A. When I first called to confirm you managed the trust, you immediately pointed the finger at Sheila and Harry. It was a textbook play, a deliberate attempt to divert our focus to Elena's family before we could even ask a question.
Mother Sheila and brother Harry are both listed as beneficiaries of Julian and Elena's trust. If we liquidate the trust, they will be getting a sizable chunk of the assets along with the others.
Exhibit B. When I pressed for financial details, you were all too eager to tell me about Harry's massive debts. Another diversion. You wanted us looking at a desperate brother instead of looking at the ledger.
I'm not sure if Elena mentioned this, but her brother Harry is underwater. A failed business venture left him buried in debt. He approached her, begging for a massive loan to clear his name. Elena actually reached out to Marcus and me to see if the trust could cover it. Leo wasn't happy about the situation. I suspect there was a major disagreement brewing between him and Harry.
Exhibit C. Elena confirmed that Leo reached out to you personally about that trust. Yet, during our entire phone conversation, you never once mentioned his name. Why stay silent about a man who was asking about your trust?
He even reached out to Sarah and Marcus.
Exhibit D. We took a look at the trust finances ourselves. You haven't just been managing it, you've been hemorrhaging it. You've been systematically bankrupting Julian's estate since the day he died. Exhibit E. Then there's the smoking gun. Your firm has been trading calls with Tony Lip, the primary suspect in Leo's murder. How does a high-end law firm end up with a killer on speed dial? Exhibit F. And the final nail in the coffin. I've just been informed that you were in constant contact with Leo on his burner phone. You weren't just his lawyers, you were his handlers. Do I need to keep going, or are you ready to cough it up? You can make this easy and talk now, or you can play it difficult. And I'll personally make sure you rot in a cell until the day you die. Your choice.
It started small. Marcus and I were siphoning off minor amounts while Julian was still alive. Just enough to live well, but not enough to be noticed. But after the accident, greed took the wheel. We stopped skimming and started stealing. We were aware of Elena's insecurity about Clara. We'd seen her with Leo in the city, We knew she was stepping out when Julian was away. We didn't interfere. Why would we? We didn't want Julian's attention back to his home life and subsequently to the trust. But we aren't fools. Being at the law firm, we ran a background check on Leo the moment we saw him. We knew exactly what he was: a career fraud, a bottom feeder. He vanished for a while after they broke up, but the moment Julian was in the ground, Leo crawled back out of the woodwork. Everything was fine until Harry reached out to Elena about his debt. Elena decided to play the savior. She started taking a deep interest in the trust, asking difficult questions, tracking transactions. We were at risk of being exposed. That's when we brought Leo into the fold. We promised him a massive cut if he could eliminate the problem. If he could eliminate Elena. The move to Dawson City was Leo's masterpiece. He wanted her isolated. The plan was to drive her insane, kill her, and frame it as a suicide fueled by her mental collapse. He'd vanish with the cut, and we'd be in the clear.
Explain Elena's mental episodes.
He faked his mental illness and met Dr. Henderson to steal letterheads from Dr. Henderson's clinic to forge prescriptions, pumping her full of heavy narcotics to keep her in a state of permanent amnesia and hallucinations. But then the neighbors arrived, Mrs. Gable and that man, Peter. They gave Elena a lifeline. Suddenly, Leo couldn't find a moment alone to finish the job. He got desperate.
Why did you hire Tony Lip?
Leo eventually hatched a plan to lure her to that abandoned warehouse and end it. He told us everything. But Marcus and I realized Leo was a loose end. We decided to double-bluff him. We figured if Leo was the one who turned up dead, the police would blame the crazy wife. The trust would stay under our control forever. So we hired Tony Lip to meet Leo in that warehouse and make sure he never walked out.
The man known as Tony Lip didn't look like a ghost. He looked like a professional, a fixer who had spent a career cleaning up the messes of the wealthy. But even the best fixers leave a trace when the job turns sideways. Officer Miller had finally pinned the shadow to the wall.
So you were sent to cancel his contract?
It was supposed to be clean. I took care of Leo in the warehouse. Quick, professional. But the girl, Elena, she was faking to be drugged. She heard the shots. She ran into the supermarket while I was cleaning the crime scene. I saw the janitor calling the cab and sending her back to home. My job was anyway not to do anything with Elena.
The case is closed, but the scars remain. Sarah and Marcus face a lifetime of prison for theft and conspiracy to murder. Tony Lip has admitted to pulling the trigger in the warehouse. And Elena, she is finally free of the ghosts, but she is the only one left to tell the story of the man she loved once and the man who was killed twice.
This channel grows based on your feedback, so tell us in the comments what stories you want to see next. To stay in the loop, make sure to like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon for automatic alerts.